Hello, you are watching the orientation lecture to The Church in the World, Theology 345, online for Summer Session 2. I am your instructor for that course. My name is Dr. Gregory Jones, and what I like to do in this lecture is to share some basic information with you about the course so that you can orientate yourself toward the expectations that we will have for your participation in this class. Okay, so let's get started. First off, what I'd like to do is to give you an introduction about the course itself, of the books themselves. We will be reading 3 texts during the course of 6 weeks or so. And the first text that we will begin with is a text by Walter Wink called The Powers That Be. The Powers That Be. You should be able to get this at the local bookstore by Walter Wink. Basically, it's a book that deals with the aspects of personal growth and understanding as it relates to the church's need to reform. Now remember, this is a course this is an upper theology course, a 300-level course, dealing with the global church, both the local and the global church, but we'll be dealing in 3 areas: reform, renewal, and reunion. And so our first text that we will use is Walter Wink's The Powers That Be, related to the reform of the church. Now this text is going to be an interesting text for us to have as a first read. It is not a theologically difficult text, but it is a text that deals with a provocative issue in the life of the church. It deals with the issue of nonviolence and violence in the life of the church and in the global church community. So we will be reading the text concurrently with looking at what's going on in the world with the Christian community and how the Christian community responds as it relates to reforming the church in the nature of violence. What is violence? How does the church participate or not participate in violence? And what is the church's position globally as it relates to violence? And how is this a aspect of reform that is needed in the life of the church? That's Walter Wink, The Powers That Be. This is the first book that you will begin reading. You should start reading this book right away. We will be reading about a book every 2 weeks. And so the reading will be a bit intense, but you should be able to handle it as a 3rd level course in theology. The second book that we will be reading will be a book called The Presence of the Kingdom. The Presence of the Kingdom. The Presence of the Kingdom is a book by Jacques Ellul. It's a book dealing with how renewal, how the church, global church, needs to renew itself, and it focuses its attention on technology and the use of technology and how technology has become a deity of sorts in the life of the Christian tradition. We will be looking at the global church and how the church responds to the use of technology, as well as some of the other provocative issues he raises as it relates to the technological society. That is Jacques Ellul, The Presence of the Kingdom. Is a very, very important read. It's kind of difficult. The difficult level goes up a notch or so, but you should be able to read it, and he'll be saying some fascinating things about technology, the justification of technique, our role as Christians in the life of the church today, and how we need to respond to this deification of technology that we are experiencing in society and around the world. The final text that we will be looking at for this course will be sections of, we won't read the entire work, but there will be sections of The Cost of Discipleship that we would read by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, very famous Lutheran theologian. We will share some information about his personal life, but we'll also look at some of the important aspects of this very, very important work that he has wrote, The Cost of Discipleship. And we will be dealing with Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Cost of Discipleship as it relates to the reunion of the global church. What does the church need to do in order to bring itself together and be a visible community for the world, is what we'll be talking about in this section. So you have 3 texts, primary texts. The primary texts are The Powers That Be by Walter Wink, The Presence of the Kingdom by Jacques Ellul, and The Cost of Discipleship by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Wink will be dealing with reform. LU will be dealing with renewal, and Bonhoeffer will be dealing with the reunion of the global church. Along with those three works, there will be several other pieces of text that I will be giving you periodically. I'll put them in a PDF on Blackboard for you. One will be Doing Justice by Dennis A. Jacobson. It won't be the entire text. It probably only be one or two reads out of it, maybe a chapter or two, as well as we will look at Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman, a very, very famous work. We'll look at segments of that, no more than a chapter or two. And then Pedagogy of the Oppressed. We will look at some terms out of this work as well. So that is the text work that we'll be looking for in the class. The class will basically require you to do three things. You will have to go to the discussion board each week. This will be how we will do attendance, and you will have to answer questions as it relates to the text. And you will have to interact with at least two other of your classmates as it relates to the discussion questions each week. So each week there will be discussions posed for you, questions given to you so that you could answer, and that will verify, number one, that you are reading the material and also that you are attending the class online. The other opportunity in terms of requirements will be book summaries. I will ask you to do very brief summaries of each of the works. These summaries will come up about every 2 weeks. They will be probably no more than 1 to 3 pages, maybe a bit more, but probably around the area of 3 pages that you will have to write every 2 weeks and post in a journal on Blackboard. This will be a summation of the work itself, and you will have to give some responses to questions as relates to the summation of each work. And then finally, and you will have 3 of those. And then finally, you will have 3 tests. Each test will be on each work, each book that we will read. So you'll have a test on Wink, a test on LU, and a test on Bonhoeffer. That will be the requirements of the course. And of course, there will be point spreads on each of those. And that I will post them on Blackboard so that you will know the amounts of each. But you can figure that the papers, you can get up to 100 points each. The tests, you will get up to 100 points each. And there will be a 60-point requirement for the discussion questions and as attendance. Okay, so that's the requirements a bit. The work that I will give you will be put in modules for each week, and you will have the reading material. You will have posted videos that you will have to watch, the lectures themselves that I will be giving you as well on the text will be a requirement that you will have to do in terms of watching for that week. I also will put a significant amount of TED conference and videos on both the content and information modules so that so it will enhance your understanding of the terminology that we'll be using. I will do everything I can to make sure that you have a basic understanding of how each unit is going. So remember, you're having 3 units: reform, renewal, and reunion. And I will post information and content on Blackboard to support what your requirements will be for each of those times. I will also have on Blackboard a schedule of the entire module system. I will post that for you as well so that you can get a sense of when things are coming due. Things will come due toward the weekend, and generally I give you the weekend to meet the obligations. On the test in particular, what I probably will do is post the test on a Friday, and you'll have several days to finish the test. So you'll have enough time to respond to it, although when you go into the test, you will not have repeated chances to go back and forth. So you need to prepare for each test, or you need to understand what the obligations will be for each test that we will give in the course. Now, let me share briefly what we will begin this time with, and you can, as you see this will be the inaugural kind of lecture that you will look at. There will be one other lecture that will focus its attention on the first week, and I will have that available for you in Module 1 as well. This will be our orientation lecture, and then there will be another lecture that will help us begin our studies together. But I want to give you a general framework of how we begin the process so that you will have a basic understanding. So, the understanding about the difference between Christians, followers of Christ, and Christendom. Those are three different aspects of how we would understand the Christian tradition forming itself out. I will give you some basic information about how there is a huge difference between the followers of Jesus Christ and Christianity, popular Christianity, and Christendom, which is a political term primarily. We will talk a little about that in our inaugural time together. The other thing that we will begin, hopefully, the next time that we meet will be an understanding of the nature of suffering, whether God is impassible and not connected to or concerned about the suffering of humankind, or is God passible? Is it the possibility of God in terms of God's understanding and empathy toward us as creatures and his creation and God's creation as it relates to suffering, how suffering takes place, and what is our responsibility as Christians in light of our understanding of who and what God is in relationship to humankind. We want to look at the nature of suffering and God's freedom and ability to respond to the suffering of God's creation and God's creatures. That is some of the things that we will be taking a look at. We'll also take a look at Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche and his understanding of the aristocratic beast, and how does that play a part in the forming of the church in Europe and the church in Western culture and Western society. We'll speak a little about that as kind of a preparation for what Wink is trying to show us in this very provocative first piece, The Powers That Be. Okay, so we're going to begin our time together. I welcome you. If there are any questions that you have to me, please go to the contact information. I am excited about